You know that sound. Every gamer, every history buff, and every veteran knows that sound. It is the heartbeat of the American infantry in World War II. While the Germans had the best machine guns, and the Russians had the most submachine guns, the United States did something no other nation on Earth could afford to do. We gave every single rifleman a semi-automatic weapon. We turned the standard infantry squad into a wall of lead. But the M1 Garand wasn't the only tool in the box. From the forgotten bolt-action relics of World War I to the futuristic infrared sniper rifles used in the dark jungles of Okinawa, the US arsenal was vast, weird, and deadly. Today, we are breaking down every single rifle used by the United States in World War II. We're talking about the legends, the failures, and the secret weapons you've probably never heard of. Lock and load. This is the arsenal of freedom. To understand how we won, we have to look at what we started with. When Pearl Harbor happened, the US Army wasn't fully ready. We had to dip into the archives. First up, the M1903 Springfield. This was the rifle that fought World War I. It was a bolt-action masterpiece, copied almost directly from the German Mauser. By 1941, it was technically obsolete. But the United States Marine Corps, they didn't care. When the Marines landed on Guadalcanal, they were still carrying Springfields. They trusted its match-grade accuracy over the newfangled semi-autos. It was slow, heavy, and kicked like a mule. But if you could see it, you could hit it. But making the 1903 was expensive and slow. So, the Army stripped it down and created the M1903-A3. They replaced the beautiful milled steel parts with stamped metal. It looked cheaper, but it actually had better sights. This became the standard weapon for rear echelon troops, MPS, guards, and artillery crews who didn't need rapid fire, but still needed to shoot straight. Then, there is the ghost of the arsenal, the M1917 Enfield. Most people forget this rifle even exists. It was actually British designed, heavy, and honestly, kind of ugly. But here is the surprise. The US actually had more of these in stock than Springfields. During the desperate early days of the war, thousands of American soldiers trained with Enfields. We also shipped crates of them to the Philippines and to China. It was the forgotten rifle that held the line, while American factories geared up for the main event. And that main event was the M1 Garand. General George S. Patton called it the greatest battle implement ever devised. This is the star of the show. Before the Garand, a soldier fired one shot, worked a bolt, re-aimed, and fired again. A German squad relied almost entirely on their machine gunner for firepower. If you killed the German machine gunner, the squad was pinned. But an American squad, every man had an M1. They could fire 8 rounds as fast as they could pull the trigger. They could suppress the enemy, move, and fire again without ever taking their eyes off the target. It fired the powerful point, 30-06 cartridge, fed from an 8-round en-bloc clip. And yes, let's talk about the ping. When the clip was empty, it ejected with a loud metallic ring. There is a myth that German soldiers waited to hear the ping so they knew the American was empty and could charge him. In reality, that's mostly soldier folklore. In the middle of a firefight with explosions and screaming, nobody is hearing a tiny piece of metal hit the dirt. And even if they did, reloading an M1 takes about 2 seconds. If a German popped his head up when he heard a ping, he usually caught a bullet from the guy standing next to the one reloading. The Garand wasn't perfect. It was heavy, weighing almost 10 pounds, and you could smash your thumb in the action if you weren't careful. A painful injury known as M1 thumb. But it was rugged, reliable, and it won the war. But the Garand had a rival. Meet the M1941 Johnson rifle. This is the hipster choice of World War II. It looked strange, with a pot-bellied middle section. It held 10 rounds in a rotary magazine, 2 more than the Garand, and you could top it off with single bullets without opening the bolt. The Army hated it. But the Marine Corps, they couldn't get enough Garands fast enough. So the Marine Paratroopers, the Paramarines, adopted the Johnson. It had a quick change barrel and broke down into 2 pieces for jumping out of planes. It was fragile, though. If you affixed a bayonet to it, the recoil mechanism actually stopped working. It eventually faded away, but it remains a collector's holy grail. Now, what if you weren't a frontline infantryman? What if you were a truck driver, a radio operator, or an officer? The Garand was too heavy to lug around. You needed a personal defense weapon. Enter the M1 Carbine. This wasn't a pistol, but it wasn't a full-power rifle either. It fired a smaller .30 caliber round. It was light, handy, and held a 15-round magazine. Soldiers loved it because it weighed half as much as a Garand. It became the most produced American small arm of the war. We made over 6 million of them. Then, the paratroopers got their hands on it. They created the M1A1 Carbine. It had a folding wire stock and a pistol grip. If you've seen Band of Brothers, this is the gun Lieutenant Winters carries. It fit perfectly into a leg bag for a combat jump. But as the war dragged on, the Army realized they needed more firepower. In 1944, they introduced the M2 Carbine. This was a carbine with a fun switch. It was select fire, meaning it could shoot fully automatic. It had a larger 30-round banana magazine. It arrived late, mostly seeing action in Okinawa, but it essentially became the grandfather of the modern assault rifle. Accuracy by volume is great, but sometimes you need one shot, one kill. That brings us to the M1903A4. They took the old bolt-action Springfield, bent the bolt handle, removed the iron sights, and slapped a low-power Weaver scope on it. It wasn't the best sniper rifle of the war. The optics were often foggy and prone to breaking, but it was available. However, the Marines in the Pacific did what Marines always do. They improvised. Many Marine snipers used the Winchester Model 70. This was a civilian hunting rifle, bought from sporting goods stores before the war. It was unofficial, but in the hands of a skilled marksman, it was deadly accurate. Then, things got weird. In the final months of the war, during the invasion of Okinawa, the US unleashed the M3 Carbine. This looks like something out of Star Wars. It was an M2 Carbine fitted with a massive, bulky sniper scope. This was an active infrared scope. It had a huge spotlight that projected invisible infrared light, and a scope that could see it. Japanese infiltrators would try to sneak into American lines at night, thinking they were invisible in the darkness. They had no idea American sentries were watching them through thermal sights. It was heavy, and the batteries barely lasted. But it was the dawn of modern night warfare. We have 2 more rifles to cover. One is a monster, and one is a toy. The monster is the Browning automatic rifle, or the BAR. Technically, the Army called this a rifle. In reality, it was a squad automatic weapon. It fired the same massive .30-06 round as the Garand, but on full auto. It weighed 20 pounds. It was brutal to carry. But when a barman opened up, head stayed down. And finally, the smallest rifle of the war, the M4 survival rifle. This wasn't for fighting Germans. It was for fighting hunger. This was a tiny, bolt-action rifle chambered in .22 Hornet. It was stored under the seat of aircraft. If a pilot was shot down in the wilderness, He could assemble this rifle to hunt rabbits or birds for food while waiting for rescue. It had a wire frame stock and looked barely like a gun, but it saved lives. From the bolt-action relics of the past to the night vision tech of the future, the American rifleman was the best-equipped soldier in history. These 13 weapons didn't just liberate Europe and the Pacific, they changed the way wars were fought forever. So, here is the big question. If you were dropped into Normandy in 1944, which one are you grabbing? The rapid-fire Garand or the lightweight Carbine? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this tour of the armory, hit that like button and subscribe for more military history deep dives. I'll see ya on the next battlefield.